स्टार्ट करें हाँ वेट करें जब बैठने के बाद रोना पड़ता है हाँ ये समझ गया ग्रीन शेड्स मैडम बहुत नीचे चले गए थोड़ा ऊपर
नजर लेके देखना
मैडम वहां से रिस्ट्रिक्शन आएगी ना
ओके
और देखो बेटर है सिटिंग ठीक है करें स्टार्ट
So we are nearing our end of the journey to the process of management functions and processes. And here we are on the dimension of organization culture. So we have known what are the various processes and functions of management. Now we're moving on to the next dimension, which we refer as the kind of software of organization. So what is this culture? Let's quickly have a look. We will go through the process of definitions. We will understand what is the concept, the similarities, and how does it impact the work life. We will try to identify what are the impacts on the work setting and how does the international environment vary on the basis of its culture. And we'll also discuss the values, like some country cluster analysis, some studies on culture. We will try to understand. So this will overall give you an idea of what is culture and what is organizational culture. A quick definition. Culture is defined as the acquired knowledge that people use to interpret experience and generate social behavior. This knowledge forms values, creates attitude, and influences the behavior. So you can say the values are in Hindi, we call it sanskar, whereas the attitudes are means the nazariya. And this in totality, like the values usually are of two types: universal values. Most of them are universal values, but few things vary from one country to another. For example, the values of taking care of a family member, like in a sense, let's say if recruitment process is happening, so a normal American person's value would be that the value of fairness. According to him, fair means the most eligible candidate is being selected and he is given the job. But when you talk about like Indonesian country, the values of the people are collectivistic in nature. So collectivistic means if a recruitment manager is of Indonesia, he will try to see how much can he help through his role to his family members, to his acquaintance, to the people he know. So this is what we refer as the like difference between the concept of where fairness for an American was the most eligible candidate, whereas the right for an Indonesian would be trying to support and hire as many as people as possible from his own acquaintance and family, because according to him, the Indonesian value, we need to take care of our people if we can. So this is what we are trying to say, that slightly there might be a change, but most of the values are universal in nature. For example, honesty, kindness, and sometimes in today's world, a lot of students say that, ma'am, where are people honest? Everybody is being illegal. Everybody is trying to cheat others. Everybody is trying to be selfish. But I just end this whole list of questions by just one question. I ask the person who is questioning, if you have a choice to have an honest friend and a dishonest friend, what would you want? And the answer is always honest. And this question I have asked to tons of students, and always the answer is the same. Everybody wants an honest person around him. Everybody wants somebody who can be trustable. So the value of trust, So these are universal values and their value never ends, I think. That's why they are called as values because they are being valued everywhere. Please understand, when I use the word values, it is not indicating any kind of mathematical notation. It is the word used to define the governing principles that help you define your life, things that are being taught by our seniors or by our we can say our elders, our teachers. They used to teach the positive things to us, our parents, because our first school is our own house. So all these things is what we refer as values. What is attitude? In short, like if you are shown a glass that is half filled with water. So if you are seeing this glass of half filled with water, you can see two things. So for one person, Mr. A, if he asks, what do you see? You know what he says? He says that I can see a glass half filled with water. Then there is another person, Mr. B. He is asked, what do you see? He says, I see a glass half empty. Then there may be a creative person, a third person, Mr. C. He has been asked, what do you see? And this person says, I see a glass half filled with air. So you see, these three people saw the same glass, but they interpreted it differently. One who was positive attitude person who saw the thing that he had. The second, the negative person, he focused more at the thing that he did not had, the emptiness. The third person, he also filled that emptiness with air. So he was creative to see that it was not the emptiness of water only, it was also filling up with air. Trust me, this half empty glass full of air may not hold enough value to you, but ask a person who is suffocating. Ask a person who is in the space trip and his oxygen is finished. And in the head, you might have seen a jar kind of thing in the head suit of a space like a astronaut. So this part is full of oxygen so that he can breathe, which is coming from a cylinder. So in case the cylinder finishes, then imagine what will be the situation of this person. So if this half glass full of air is put into it, it will give him maybe a 5 minutes of breath more. So this third person, the creative Mr. C, could see that good part as well, along with the half glass of water. This is what we refer to as attitude. So we all have a tendency to see things as positive or negative or in a creative way. And it has often been found people who have a creative orientation can come up with something or the another positive in even the difficult situation. You must have seen some people who are full of humor. A company where sense of humor is appreciated, you will often find people are laughing, happy, chirping with each other, discussing with each other, interactive with each other. In such kind of company, there is lesser chances of stress happening. So, the attitude is also something that is created by the organization, created by the people around you. How? If your parents are very positive, so every time whenever you think negatively about something, they may change your interpretation. So once they change your interpretation, you will be made to see things in a different way, and you also acquire that positive attitude. So you can say the attitude rubs. If you live more with negative attitude people, you also tend to become a little negative. If you become a more positive, if you live with more positive people around you, then you also improvise. That's why I guess we say your company matters. The kind of people you live, their qualities rub on you and you also acquire those qualities. So that's why we can say culture not just helps us form values, it also helps create the attitude and it also influences the behavior. So I gave you two examples, the culture of your family, the behavior of your mom and dad, the culture of your office, the bosses, the colleagues, that will definitely impact your behavior. So, sometimes you might have heard that an honest person, when he landed in a dishonest organization, so how hard he tried to be honest, but the people around him made him feel outcast, made him feel that he's doing something wrong. Why is he not taking bribes? Everybody will look badly towards him. that he is trying to make us feel bad that we are taking bribe and he's not taking bribe. He's trying to show how honest he is. Look what kind of person he is. So this person who was supposed to be holding good values when put in a wrong place will feel as if he is the outcast, he is the left out, he is the one not being appreciated, liked, or taken care by people. So this is what is the value of culture. Culture may not be available in hard holdable things, but culture is there in every nook and corner of any organization. The way a company keeps its organization clean, neat, is also a very small example of their value of cleanliness. Then, the way people sit, for example, let's say an organization where people are sitting in cubicles, in separate rooms. In a way, it is trying to say we all have our own privacy and we don't want it to be hindered. In some countries, the doors of the room are also closed. This further increases the privacy level and the power difference. But in Japanese organization, they always make all their employees sit in a single big hall where they are separated by tables and shelves. No other division. They can easily see each other sitting. The height of the shelf is also half, which means easily you can see the head of the people sitting next to you. So what a person is doing is visible. The amount of supervision is informal. Like my boss can see what I am doing, how I am sitting on the desk, how I am interacting with my customers, client, and anybody who comes near me. So it is an indirect supervision. But he does not have to come to my desk to check what I am doing. And I, as a junior employee, can always learn what my boss is, how my boss is behaving, how is his interaction style, how does he respond to people, and I can continuously learn from it. So, Japanese believe that this kind of interchange is more effective than training. They believe that bosses should act as a role model. They believe that all their employees are equal. One person may be a vice president or a director. That is just a role. Other person may be a junior executive or maybe a housekeeping sweeper, but then they are also performing their role. I'll just like to give you an example. So once a journalist went to NASA, I hope you all know, the American Satellite Association. So, like, what was happening there? He went there to check out how the satellites are being sent, what is the process, what is the culture of that place. So, he was asking different people. He asked the scientists regarding their contribution to the organization, and they told in great details. Then he landed up in front of a housekeeping staff. He thought, I have already talked to lot many senior professionals. Let me see what is the response of a junior employee like a housekeeping staff. He asked him, okay, what is your role in NASA? And to his utter surprise, the housekeeping staff said, I help the scientists in ensuring that they send the right satellites at the right time in the right way, and they are most successful in doing it. The journalist was surprised and also shocked. How can this housekeeping staff support in the process of sending the satellites? He wondered. He could not help asking, oh, can you please specify how do you do it? He says, look, man, if I don't clean the surroundings, if I don't clean the tables, the chairs on which my scientists are sitting, they will sit in dirt or they will feel unhappy about it. They will not be having sanity of their minds and their work will get affected. Similarly, if I don't clean the toilets in which they use, then they may get sick because of the lack of hygiene, and they may get sick and they may not work properly in the office, and hence the satellites will not be sent in time. So this was a chance for the journalists to be brightened up and illuminated or enlightened. And yes, the answer was perfectly right. It is the attitude of the person, how he see his work. It's a choice of that NASA's housekeeping staff to see his work as small, insignificant, or say, oh, I just clean the toilets, I'm just the housekeeping staff. Or seeing his work as a big task that I am contributing towards the sending of the satellites. So it's our attitude that reflects the way we take our work. And trust me, I can vouch through this example that this housekeeping staff must be very particular while cleaning, while doing his work, while cleaning any kind of dirt and gibberish from the organization. He must be putting his best because he see his work as an important work. So one who is always having a positive attitude towards his work will like to put its best, will not demean its work or himself. So that's a very high grade of work ethics and a very great amount of positive attitude that this person hold. And it is bound to reflect and influence your behavior. Few characteristics of culture. It is learned. You acquire it from the people around you. It is shared. That means you are living in a common environment. Maybe you're sharing cubicles. Maybe you're sharing a meeting space. Let's say an organization like Japanese organization, they have meeting rooms. So because they have open sitting, they cannot have their meeting in open place because that will disturb other people. They have meeting rooms. Anybody can in advance book those meeting rooms when they need to meet. And then these meeting rooms are shared. So now, if one person does a meeting and leaves the room dirty, it reflects badly of that team. Therefore, each one has to ensure that they have to leave the room clean, spick and span when they are finishing their meeting. They can take the help of housekeeping staff, but at the end, the coordinator of the meeting has to ensure that the room is left in a very usable situation. So, this is an example of a shared culture. People share things and they have to understand how they are supposed to leave it. If you look at, I'm sharing you something small, like you see in foreign countries, how do they ensure that the roads are clean? It's not, they don't just say that the government should clean the roads. They ensure that their rules are such that everybody ensures to clean the roads. For example, if a person's dog is like taken for a walk and he does the poo, so that this person is supposed to carry a polythene and a cleaner and he picks up the poo, puts it into the bag and then throws it into the dustbin. So what is he doing? And then he sprays the disinfectant over that place. In a way, he is ensuring that the road or the sidewalks are clean and free of the dog's poo, and he does not contribute towards dirtying of the road. He is not saying this that that the government needs to clean it or the housekeeping staff needs to clean it. He takes up his responsibility. So every citizen is made to take up their responsibility and ensure that we all get a clean road. This kind of practice is always ensuring that we all get the best of the word. Transgenerational. Transgenerational means it passes from one to another. In India or in not many countries, in America, people keep on switching organizations. They move from one organization to another. The reason is they are achievement oriented. Once they have learned things from one culture, they believe they need to move on to another to learn more. But the value of loyalty is so high in Japanese countries that people here keep sticking to one organization because they say, my father, my grandfather, they all worked in this organization. My bread and butter of the family came from this organization. I would also like to contribute to the same organization. So the culture of loyalty is passed on from the grandfather to the father and the father to the son. They keep appreciating the good things that their present organization is giving for them, and this lifetime employment thing further helps an organization also take care of its staff just like a family. So we can say that culture does not end in one generation. When we acquire some qualities, we spread it in the family and it further passes on from grandfather to father and father to the son and son to so on and so forth. So similarly, the daughters, they also transfer the culture of the families. And that's why you might have heard a statement that when you teach a girl, Means you're trying to give her an educational a culture which is full of education, knowledge, bright thinking, and insight development. They say that when you teach a girl, you are improving the two generations and the two families, because in an Indian girl gets married and goes to another family. So she's transferring that positive culture to another family, to her sons and daughters also. That's again another example of transgenerational. This is not just true for family, it is equally true for organizations also. So, one director creates or one founder creates a particular kind of culture. This is transferred from one employee to a junior, senior employee to a junior employee, and so on and so forth. It keeps on getting passed. The same stories, the stories of the boss, how the boss used to practice things, how things are appreciated in our organization. All these things are transferred, and these stories help you in understanding the culture. Symbolic. Lot of things act as a symbol. For example, the uniform is a very symbolic representation of oneness. When people, you remember your school? You all had a single uniform, one for a girl and one for the boy, or even for the girl and boy, similar dresses. Now, why do we have this uniform? This uniform, as the word says, created uniformity. Everybody looks same. You cannot differentiate between someone who is you cannot differentiate between someone who is from poor family or from a rich family. They are all wearing the same dress, which kind of makes them all as students of one school. So your symbols are a clear identification of the culture that you belong to. Patterned symbol, this culture at times slightly moves up and down, means can change a little. For example, a live example of the fashion culture can be observed with the help of the pattern behavior. The work, the embroidery, the use of stars, and all these was very much visible in 60s. The same pattern of fashion after 50 years is back again. So after 60 years, we see the same thing. The bell bottom, which was being worn in 60s, 70s, and 75, the same bell bottoms or flared pants or flared jeans have become a trend of the last decade. So we see that a trend which is always in a sine curve, which goes up, comes in fashion, goes down, again comes back. So the culture, the dressing culture has been observed into be a patterned form. It can happen in organizations also. Some few practices, because of few bosses gets appreciated more, and then those bosses go away. Then it might be forgotten for some day. Then again, a new boss comes who value that particular culture or practice, and then the behavior or the practice is again reinforced. So again, it can be patterned. Adaptive. Culture is often adaptive. What do? You try to you try to change. I mean, a culture also teaches you how to adapt or change. For example, like you see in a tribal environment, these people are aware that they have to hunt, they have to kill the animal in order to survive. Now, let's say if the animals are getting shot in a particular area, what do that culture do? They move on, the nomads. They keep on moving from one place to another in order to get food. So they keep on adapting with the new environment and keep changing. In the organization also, we say that the present word is a VUCA word. What does this VUCA word mean? VUCA is an acronym comprising of four letters VUCA. So V stands for volatile, something where changes very fast. U stands for uncertainty, where there is lot of unfixed dimension which can change time to time. Then you have C for complex. Things are very there are too many dynamics or too many dimensions involved which increase the complexity of the work or the environment. And last one, but not the least, is ambiguous. So things are confusing. You have to devise a meaning, you have to interpret them differently. So that's why in this VUCA world, if we have to survive, we have to be very dynamic. We have to keep on changing ourselves. We have to keep on adapting ourselves. So the culture that does not adapt extincts. You remember? You must have watched those movies of dinosaur. Dinosaurs used to eat so much. So there are two theories. One theory says there was a like a asteroid fallen on the earth because of which the dinosaurs extincted. And the second theory says that because they used to eat so much, they ate all the food around in the earth and there was not enough left for them to, therefore they extincted because they did not adapt. A quick look at some of the priorities of cultural value. These cultural values do not stay same for different countries. So I'll share two values of each of these three countries which are very different from each other. So at one end you have United States, which is a live example of the modern world. Here the two values which are very importantly accepted are freedom. People prefer to make their own choices. Prefer that they should be free to make their own choices and they don't want to be slave of anybody else. In 1776, United States attained their freedom, and from then onwards, they have been working hard to ensure that their freedom is not taken away. They have tried to become so achievement oriented. They have done every work from the ground level to the highest level to ensure that they have the best of both worlds. And you can see the outcome also. They are known as a superpower. So in just 250 years, you can say they have reached to the height because of their ability to be free of anybody, their desire to be their own master. And how have they attained it? They have attained it with the help of creating an independent mindset from a smallest child to the eldest one. So nobody can direct a kid of 3 year old also in US. I can just share a small example. One of my cousins, she lives there in US. So the time when she was just 1 year in US, she has only gone there last year, you can say. So she rang me up. She was in panic, and what she said, I'm sure would surprise you too. She made this call to me in the night at 10 o'clock and she told me, Hey Namita, do you know what happened today? And I was surprised. What happened? So she told me at 10 o'clock, she's ringing me up. I asked, Yeah, what happened? She said, Today my daughter, who was 3 years old, was literally howling and shouting and was not listening and did not want to go to school. I asked her, What is the reason, Beta? Why you don't want to go? And she kept on shouting, No, I don't want to go. I will not go. I will not go. She kept on doing like this. And then when she did not give me any reason, she did not tell me anything. She just kept on saying, I just don't want to go. And then I slightly got angry and I slapped her. It was a very light slap on her cheek. But then she got angry and she picked up the phone. And later on, I got to know just 2 days back in her school, she was told that nobody has a right to be physical with you. Nobody can beat you. Nobody can slap you. If even your parents slap you, then you can ring up on 100 number and call the police. And this girl simply ran off and rang off 100 and called the police. The police came. They made me write an apology letter. They warned me that if something like this happens again, I can be taken to the jail. Oh my God, Namita, I'm so shocked that such kind of thing happened. I was just trying to tame her. I was just trying to let her understand that it is important to go to school. How do I bring change for the goodness of my own daughter? So you see, this is just an example to let you know how independent the US citizens are expected to be. They don't believe that even the parents should be forcing themselves and hindering the independence of a child. The second example is of Japan. They value belongingness to a group. They value group harmony. They always believe in teamwork. The Arab countries, they value family security a lot. They will do whatever that is important to take care of their family. Family harmony. They will try to go to a great extent to ensure that the family harmony is maintained. So both Japan and Arab are directly showing that they are a country that believe in collectivisticness. Whereas you can very much see from the values given in United States, they have a great preference for individualism, for individual perfection, individual likeliness, individual appreciation, etc. This content is taken from a book by Elashmawi and Harris, which is named as Multicultural Management. Some examples of managerial approach or how this is being used, how culture reflects in work life, centralized versus decentralized decision making. So those organizations which believe highly in the power distance means that senior is senior, the powerful one, the senior most, the elderly is the most intelligent person, believes in centralization of organization, believes in hierarchy, and here the decisions are only given by the top boss. Whereas in decentralized decision making, these are those organizations which prefer that every person at its own level should have certain amount of authority to take decisions related to it, and they can take those decisions. Safety versus risk. Those cultures which are more risk taking in nature, they prefer their employees to take chances, make mistakes, try new things, be innovative. Example could be like Apple and Google, whereas there are a lot of manufacturing organizations which are very risk prone, who do not want to take any chance. They've got very standardized procedures. They will only want their employee to follow step by step whatever they have pre-decided. Individual versus group rewards. Those organizations like where the individualism is preferred, the individual rewards are more prevalent. But organizations which are group oriented, they would start preferring team rewards so that people can work in a team together and get the outputs. Informal versus formal procedures. Those organizations which are more strict, formal, standardized would prefer formal way of doing things, whereas those organizations which prefer lesser formalization, lesser standardization, they prefer informal procedures. Example, IT organization, whereas the manufacturing organizations are usually formal in nature. High organization loyalty versus low organization loyalty. So when we say loyalty, we are trying to say that those organizations like Eastern countries like Japan and organizations coming up with this kind of culture, they would prefer high amount of organization loyalty. Whereas organizations which are exist in America type of environment, they would prefer more of loyalty towards their job, not towards the organization. People easily leave one organization and move on to another because they lack the organization loyalty. Whereas in Japan, people work for 100 years in the same organization. Cooperation versus cooperation, where in collectivistic culture, people believe in cooperation, whereas in individualistic culture, people believe more in competition. Short term versus long term, where short term means focus is more towards what is good for today, and long term means where the focus is more on what is good for tomorrow. So usually the Eastern countries have a long term horizon and they plan for long distance and they save more for future, whereas a lot of American countries have a more short term approach. They believe what is good for now should be focused on and quick decisions need to be taken. Stability versus innovation. Organizations which prefer innovation, they permit employees to take mistakes, try new things, do research. The organizations which are stable, they only want people to follow the same steps of culture. This is a good model of culture. So culture is formed on the basis of the assumptions that are there in every individual mind and it guides their behavior. The norms and values of society also defines our culture. The rules and regulations that we form, unwritten rules and regulations, the values that we follow, and some stories, pictures, diagrams, the dressing, the food, all these things are the products of the society, also define the culture of an organization. So I guess this gives you enough idea about what is a culture of organization. I'd like to take you further on our second topic that is called as organizational change. So what does organizational change means? Let's try to understand. Organization change is a process by which organizations move from their present state to some desired future state. Why? To increase their effectiveness. I will just give you an example of Air India. So let's say Air India was there in government's hand. Government tried to bring some changes. It was almost about to get bankrupt. The financial situations of Air India was very bad, and slowly by slowly it was going down to drains. And government tried its best to bring some organizational changes into it, but none of those changes really worked well. And it really, from the time it was taken from Tata's and then it was handed over to Tata's, the all Air India never did very good profit making. So, what was wrong? Something in the processes of the organization was such that it was not letting it to be effective. So, finding out those things which are hindering the progress of the organization and trying to work out or through all the resources and through all your capability to increase the organization's ability to become profitable, to develop a good ROI. This is what we refer as change. Now, please understand change can be of two types: planned change, unplanned change. So when the change is happening as a reaction to the external environment, we call it unplanned change. You remember 2 years back, most of the organizations had to shut down their work because due to corona, they could not permit employees to be together in the organization and further spread the disease. This was an unplanned change. Nobody had seen it happen. Nobody knew that the last 2 years would go the way they went. So that was an unplanned change. And the react and whatever the organization, the people, the hospitals, the government, whatever they did was a reaction to what was the external situation. But normally it is not like this. Every organization plans how are they going to spend their next week, next month, next year, and they try to follow that plan, follow that process, and get their end results. So, whenever an organization is doing such activities that are planned in advance, which we use the word proactive, that means we know that this kind of change is requisite or required for an organization, and by making this change, we will make our organization better ready or improve its readiness for the future. Then we go for such kind of changes. So, planned changes are engaging in activities that are proactive and purposeful to improve the ability of the organization for handling the change in the organization, for handling the employees' behavior. Through this process, often we use some subject matter expert. In some organization, this planned change can also be brought with the help of the top management, but most of the time, when the top management fails to bring these small changes, then a big exercise of organization change is done with the help of a subject matter expert who is called as change agent. This change agent is supposed to be a person who has experience in bringing changes in the organization, who has been working from long many years in various types of organization, that he has idea of what change in what process would lead to what change in the output and the returns. So such kind of person is being hired and assigned towards bringing change in the organization. These change agents act as leaders in the change process and finally help in attaining or achieving the desired results. Now, it is said that companies that have gone, some examples of companies that have gone through changes are live example of some companies that have really succeeded in bringing changes are British Airways. So like our Air India, British Airways also went through a process where they kind of were suffering through these difficulties. So what did they do? They actually had to kind of bring a lot of changes. What kind of changes you would want to know? What happened in British Airways that their employees had kind of developed the thought process that we are a government organization, and what can happen to us? We can never be fired. They just assume that we can never be fired, and they started having a not so good attitude towards the customer. So what happened? Owing to which, slowly by slowly, new airways, new airlines developed, and customers start moving from British Airways to the various new airlines. The reason being is that these new airlines were providing a lot of good and new facilities which are valuable. Now, these same facilities and the same attitude of the employees was not to be seen. Therefore, the difficulties were being caused, and finally, British Airways lost a large number of customers, and it was slowly moving again away from profitability. It started getting in loss. So when the organization top management tried its level best and could not bring change, it announced very clearly and very openly to all the employees in the organization that we all are going through a process of organizational change. They brought an external expert, and with the help of this external expert, they also tried to kind of take this whole process, and they did large amount of training. So, what all are the things that one can improve is what we are trying to see. What is it that we can improve? Number one, we can bring changes in the human resources. That means if our people's skills, abilities, attitude, there are three things actually. When we talk about human resources competency, when we talk about human resources competency, then we say three things: knowledge, skills, and attitude. If at any of the level our employees are not good enough, are not perfect, are lacking the skills, lacking the attitude, as was in the case of British Airways, they were lacking the right attitude towards their customer, because of which the organization was suffering. So we need to bring changes in the human resource. Second is the functional resources. Functional resources in terms like we can say the processes. If our processes are not right, there are some mistakes in the processes. किसी और का है class. So we need to understand that the technological capabilities also can, like, besides the functions, we can also need to take care of the technological capabilities. So what is technological capabilities means that the machineries, let's say if a machinery has gone obsolete. So if a machinery has gone obsolete, it means that new machineries have to be brought. Therefore, the capacity of the prior machines have turned up less, or these are no more good enough to serve the new customers. It could be any kind of obsoleteness. So this has to be taken care of, or the change in the new technology has to be bought, and people have to be trained. Then you have organizational capabilities. Let's say the change is required in all these dimensions: the people, their skills, the various functions of management, the technologies, and also any other aspect that needs to be modified or changed. So, therefore, this is how, when all these things have to be changed, we refer this term as organizational capabilities. So, what all are the changes that you can bring in the human resource? Let's try to understand this part. So, investment in training and development. That means if the skills of people are less, you need to train them. Let's say people are new, they are new joinees, and they do not really know how to behave in a particular culture of the organization. They have to be directed, guided. Let me give you a small example here. Uh, some person, let's take an example of a person who's very vibrant, very open to interact, very uninhibited, and an extrovert, comes up in an organization which is very formal, where normal chit chat is not permitted or seen as bad. or negative, then this kind of employee who is a chirpy extrovert, he could be, it's not necessarily that a person needs to be, sorry, that a person needs to be young in order to be chirpy. It's a nature of the person. So let's say if this person is chirpy and wants to talk and finds it convenient to work when he understands the work better and he wants to connect and he's informal in his style of connecting. So when this employee lands up in this organization, the organization would not really welcome him a lot, would not see him as a good employee, would not really respect him enough. Trust me, if the employee is not appropriately guided at the very start during the induction training, during the onboarding process, during the socializing training, then this employee is soon to leave the organization. He will not fit into that organization culture. Therefore, if people's personality and their skills are not matching, then you need to kind of help them change the changing norms and values. So many a times in organizations you realize certain unwritten rules have to be changed. Like in the past, manual accounting was being done. So the workers or the accountants used to write down the accounting records on the books of the accounts. Whereas now you see that this process is kind of moved to tele. Like it has to be done in the with the help of a software. So these employees have to learn how to print, how to submit, how to do digital submissions, how to format, and there might be some common understanding on using the shared printer. So, who will use the printer first? How do you kind of create a queue on the digital printer? This is just a small example of the common practices that might be needed in the organization. So, all the people will have to together come up with some kind of norms. Bosses may have to help so that people can use shared resources. Values to motivate a multicultural and diverse workforce. For example, in the past, usually people were from one city or maybe from nearby villages or from maximum in a metro city, you might have people from different cities. But today, you see, the workforce has grown so diverse. You have different people of different genders, people of different states, people of different religion, people of different geographical location, people of different color, caste, and creed, people of different countries also, people of speaking different languages also. So, like, how should a person or how should the policies be in an organization? So, like a small example, in the past there was nothing called as RH. RH is restricted holiday. So, like in the past, the local holidays were only given as a leave. But it was realized that people from different cultures now become a part of government system. So restricted holidays were brought into practice. So let's say these restricted holidays means each one from different religion will have one day which is assigned as restricted holiday. So you can choose the holiday that suits your religion, which you want to celebrate, and out of the whole year you can only take that one restricted holiday out of the four available. So, like maybe a Muslim may be willing to take it on a Bakrid, a Hindu may be willing to take it on Raksha Bandhan, maybe a Sikh may be able to take it on some Jayanti or maybe some Guru Tegh Bahadur Jayanti, and then a person from South India may want to take it on um, during any kind of their own festival that we have done, like let's say Onam happening very near to Sakranti or some same day or Sakranti or Lodi. So one can choose uh, which holiday they want to take. So this is support to the diverse workforce. Promotion and reward system is one another way of bringing changes in the human resource. Changing the composition of the team, like Adding more people of younger generation also helps in bringing change because the millennial generation or the young employees think differently. Changes at now second is changes through functional resources. So the changes that are happening by transferring the resources between the functions which need it most can be a way of creating these changes. For example, during Corona days, it was well observed that the factory shop was closed. Therefore, the production was not really happening. So, the resource allocation that was done to the production could now be shifted towards HR because HR department has to do a lot of training of the employees. It had to change the structure from the manual structure to the digital structure. It has to create more engagement parties digitally. It has to do all the trainings in a digital mode. It has to support in the funding of certain technologies if the employee needed because they had to be funded for laptops in case the company had to could not give them the desktops for home. So during Corona lockdown, lot of things changed. Things moved on from online methodology to information technology or digital methodology. So not just organizations, but also the institutions, the schools, all of them had to change the functional resources and they had to transfer the most of the resources to that function which was like IT or HR because these were the two that were maneuvering between the whole process. The third major type of changes is technological change. As I told you, that training people is one part which we already covered in human resource and changing the technology so that we have the right type of technology that helps in getting the work done. For example, in the past where people were very easily working with the help of the pack that they used to take in their mobile phones. But when in Corona days they were working from home, those packs were insufficient. So not many people bought Wi-Fi for their houses so that all the members in the family could easily use the internet. The technological capabilities are a core competence of any organization. So if they are lacking, then it will really affect the organization negatively. The last but not the least, the best set of changes, the final change is the organizational capabilities. So when I mean organizational capabilities, that means bringing the larger change into organization culture and the structure to meet the external or the environment requirements. Like, for example, you see, in the past, most of the organization used to have a hierarchy. They used to have a structure where there were long line of levels, and people used to communicate from lowest to the highest, the the bottom up communication and the top down communication was being used. But we realized that this is a slow way of communicating and the decisions turn out to be slow. Therefore, more organizations, what did they do? They started using team-based structure because the team-based structure responds fast and also that the hierarchical structure also at times barricades communication. It hinders communication. How? Let's see that if a boss is on leave of 5 days, he has gone for some important organizational meeting, but he's not on the seat. Then the decision which has to be passed by him to his senior, that file keeps on waiting for him on his table, and the decision never happens till the time he is back. So we can say that the if the structure of an organization is like hierarchical, the communication can get slow, disturbed, and barricaded. Let's say a person leaves at a position, then the decision may further be extended till the time somebody else takes away his position and looks at his files and gets the matter resolved. So we can say that by bringing change in organization culture and the structure, using more of team-based structure where people can easily interact with each other. We can make the organization more effective and quick to respond in the VUCA word. What are the various forces that make people change? So the six type of forces that causes change are competitive forces. That means the competitors in the organization. Then you have the economic, political, and global forces. That means the changing economic environment. For example, recession, when it comes, it makes organizations change. Then you have the political environment where you have like changes in the government, sudden change in a government, the drop down of a government will really hinder a lot of industrial practices in the organization also, because policies also change with the changing political party. Then we have the global forces that, like, for example, the changes at the world level, like Ukraine war. Lot of prices have got high, the wheat prices have got increased, the gas prices have increased. And because you can see in Canada, while there was shutdown and the lockdown, now we were not using enough cars and enough petrol and diesel. And Alberta state, a state in Canada, depends a lot on these fuels, and these fuels were not being bought. There was a lot of stock, and therefore it started the recessionary practices in Canada. And further, due to many more reasons like war, the the contradictions or these recessions are falling down. So these are some of the examples of how organizational change are affected by the external entities, by the internal entities, and both of them together leads us to a reason where we need to bring changes. With this, I would like to end my journey of this subject, management functions and processes. So I, Dr. Namita, would like to bring end to this. This whole course comprises of block 1, 2, 3, and 4. And this is where I would like to end this journey. Good luck for your future and study of this course. Take care. Namaste.